Hello everyone, I hope you're doing really well. It's the 2nd of August 2025. I'm Gary Waterman, a former UK police constable. I'm doing this video again because I think the microphone was rubbing on the steering wheel or cloves or something because there was a ruffling sound. Anyway, a quick summary for those of you that haven't seen my previous videos. So since 2022, when I was a director for a company called Exbourne Manor Freehold Limited, and with the help of some others along the way, I have acquired irrefutable, verifiable and corroborative evidence of decades-long international government fraud. This is where our governments and their organisations have been forging the Companies House registration system and the incorporation documents against their own laws and legislation, such as the 2006 Fraud Act and the Theft Act 1968, to create a criminal centralised network. And this is why we have the World Economic Forum. Literally everything has been centralised. This includes all insurance companies, all supermarkets, all solicitors, etc. And unfortunately, there really is no choice, only the illusion of choice. Even the whole legal system and the democratic process appears to have been compromised by this. And I do suspect that Donald Trump has been positioned fraudulently using this system. Now, the latest evidence suggests that there is a very dark and sinister group at the head of this that has been involved in very serious crimes against children, even worse than their sexual abuse, and appear to have had a plan involving collider technology and cell towers against all of humanity, if not against creation itself. Now, there's been deliberately no verification of any companies, okay, and the police, Companies House, of course, and the government have known this, and of course that would absolutely deliberately and knowingly facilitate international conflicts, international terrorism, and the most awful crimes against children, child trafficking, etc., but also international drug trafficking. But the actual evidence suggests that they are behind all of that, and that everything else they've been leading us to believe is a deception to create divide and a risk of conflict as a distraction to what they are really involved in. So I need to get this evidence out because over the last 3 years, I've been desperately trying to secure the evidence through the raw data of screenshots from the Companies House register away from online, okay, realising that they may try and remove some of that evidence. And lo and behold, in the last 2 weeks or so, the National Crime Agency, which is heavily implicated in this, have publicised an article that they have removed suddenly 11,500 companies from the Companies House register. So I've secured all of this evidence, and one of the reasons I haven't done a video recently is because now what I'm trying to do is put that evidence into one evidential research document, and that is obviously taking considerable time. But I believe that this document, even as it is now, proves beyond all reasonable doubt that our governments have been involved in serious crimes against humanity. So this document is extremely important. I'm going to have a quick look at the document now and a few other bits and pieces, and then the next video that I'm going to do, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about the more recent evidence that I have acquired. But I'd like to give my WhatsApp number out to everybody now, because they're suppressing the social media platforms, which are all centralised and part of this, but they will, I believe, struggle to stop a document through a one-to-one messaging system. So my WhatsApp number is, if you're outside of the UK, +44 7883 073 043. That's +44 7883 073 043. If you're in the UK, then it's 07883 073 043. That's 07883 073 043. Send me a message and I can get this document to you, and I'm continuously adding to it, so I'll just continuously send the updated document out. Thanks very much. Document so far, there's 364 pages at the moment, but as you can imagine, there will be considerably more as the evidence continues to be added. It's a little bit disjointed and there is some repetition, but I'm trying to improve that as I go. As you can imagine, this is very complex, trying to get it in a way that everybody can understand it, where it flows, but also they can verify all of the evidence. This is why I'm putting the links into the document of the Companies House registration system and all of the research that I'm doing, so that everything can be verified. I'm also trying to provide maximum exposure by adding images of those that appear to be implicated. So as an example, here at the bottom, you've got Lisa Osofsky, who was the head of the Serious Fraud Office at the time of me making my initial reports in 2022, and she was moved afterwards. Above, you've got Martin Sutherland, who is one of the CEOs of BAE Systems, and that is the largest UK defence contractor, which is a huge part in all of this. And this is why you've got international leaders involved, including that of Russia, Iran, Iran, Donald Trump, Israel, China even, okay, because all the time they can make you believe there's a risk of a conflict, then they can help, that can justify them trying to get more money from you and defraud you through this system. And of course, many of the actual contracts probably aren't even involving the real exchange of trade as we're being led to believe, and it's just the deception of it so that they can defraud humanity through this system. Martin Sutherland was also appointed as a CEO for De La Rue, the main currency producer for the world almost, which is also part of this fraud, and there's been some very significant moves in relation to that, which we're going to look at in the next video. And I only knew about that because somebody else provided that information, so thank you to them. So it's a substantial document, and what we're going to do is just look at how Companies House appear to be making it seem as though they're resolving the fraud, but actually allowing it to continue. And the nice thing about this document is it can be searched for any keywords. Type them right. And there's a picture of Richard Branson. There's a reason that it was called the Virgin Foundation, I believe, bearing in mind we're talking about the most innocent of all being targeted in this. But underneath it says, what we're going to do is look at the information and evidence preceding this in another video, okay? And all intelligence agencies are involved, everybody, okay? It appears as though they are actually running the real terrorist organizations against humanity as part of a deception, and linking into this fraud, and then using the deception of the falsified, staged terrorist incidents to survey and infiltrate people's devices who may try and expose the criminal system they've got in place. So Kash Patel has been recently positioned as the head of the FBI by Donald Trump, who is also implicated, everybody. And it says, referring back to the research of Kash Patel, JV Patel Limited, with this director's name, connects to Glebe Knoll Limited and Arm Secretaries Limited, is shown in its people record with 483 appointments. From here, many of the companies are shown with registered addresses of virtual secretaries. I had not seen this in any of the other research, so it's possible that those involved in the intelligence arena may be using it to continue to funnel their criminal money to buy time until they're ready to enable their agenda, to enact their agenda. This suggests they are committed to continuing their criminal agenda against humanity by claiming there are virtual entities as an attempt to completely remove any human accountability or liability. You can't, of course, hold a virtual secretary, or what they're claiming to be a virtual secretary, to account, can you, for any criminal activity? This likely explains why, for the first time since 1844, when Companies House started, that on the 26th of October 2023, as I was continuing the exposure, Companies House publicised proposals to verify some company incorporations. This would, of course, allow them to be selective in who is part of their criminal agenda, part of the fraud. On the 4th of March 2025, Companies House implemented new regulations that seem to have excluded secretaries from any verification process, and in the circumstances do not go anywhere near close enough to preventing the crimes against humanity that they have been knowingly and deliberately allowing. In fact, they appear to be behind all of it and making the world believe that there's other factions and groups to create a risk of conflict and divide between different faith groups and other individuals, and as a distraction to their real criminal system, as I said. So it is now essential, I believe, that there is full verification of all aspects of companies with much stricter measures, as well as a transparent local, national and international public spending system, and in relation to leasehold property, which is also a huge part of the money laundering process. There's lots of other things that need to be happening, but that's what I've mentioned here. Look at the new regulations by Companies House. This is the gov.uk website, if it loads up. And there's no mention, as far as I can see, of any suitable verification for secretaries. So if they're not going to regulate and verify all areas of a company, then the laundering is just going to continue through that element of non-verification. And you can see here the article at the top where I mentioned the 26th of October 2023. Now, Companies House was started in 1844. There had never been any verification of details, deliberately and knowingly facilitating world problems. And then suddenly, after the fraud was being reported, 26th of October, they started to mention verification. Here's Louise Smythe, who is the CEO of Companies House that was implemented in 2017. That's no coincidence, I suspect. That's the same year that I think Gordon Bowden started to identify elements of the Companies House fraud through the non-verification in relation to the address of 788 to 790 Finchley Road, where there was over 260,000 addresses registered at one point, with nobody even being at that address, which means there's nobody to hold any litigation papers to. And those companies were linked to high-level politicians, including Tony Blair, but also international mafia connections, and also connections to dictatorships and corrupt politicians. 2017 is also the same year that Donald Trump was positioned as the 45th president. 4 and 5 equals 9. He then came in again in 2025 as the 47th president. 4 and 7, 11. That's 9/11, everybody, the World Trade Center disaster date, which is massively connected to all of this international fraud. The World Trade Center disaster, along with the Madeleine McCann case, Lucy Letby case, Nicola Bulley, and various other important cases where it appears as though they're trying to silence individuals and hide the real criminal system that they're involved in here. But I can see no element of the verification that is suitable in relation to secretaries. Now let's have a look at the National Crime Agency, because I want to show you where they are trying to remove evidence from the Companies House register. So here it says the National Crime Agency, or NCA, was formed in 2013, the year after CERN, which is the Large Hadron Collider, which is where all evidence converges on this technology, everybody, okay? Supposedly discovered the Higgs boson, or God particle, and as the exposure of their criminal system continues, the NCA publicised that it had suddenly removed 11,500 companies from the Companies House register on the 16th of July 2025. They have chosen to ignore all of my police reports or of irrefutable and verifiable evidence of a criminal network running the world. In my opinion, this removal of public information is clearly an attempt to remove evidence of their crimes against humanity. And I suspect their agenda also, because I've mentioned the CERN and the Hadron Collider technology a lot. Well, there's also a collider in New York, and that collider was initially started up in 2000, the year before the World Trade Center disaster. Now, the World Trade Center disaster massively links to the collider technology. And also, we have the collider in CERN, Switzerland. We're going to go into a lot more detail about this another time. However, the collider in CERN, Switzerland actually started in 2008, which is also a relevant time in all of this. So here's the article confirming that the National Crime Agency, well, bear with me, that's the website, but the actual link to this is, there you go, on the NCA, National Crime Agency website. You can see 11,500 companies struck off the Companies House register after a crackdown. Thousands of UK companies have been removed from the Companies House register over the last year following a crackdown coordinated by the National Economic Crime Centre. Well, the National Crime Agency is massively implicated in this fraud, and I'm going to show you some example of the evidence confirming that. So when you search National Crime Agency Companies House through Google, you have a company called NCA UK Limited. Here it is. And that company was started in May 2007. That is 2 days before Madeleine McCann went missing, which is no coincidence, everybody. Above it, you can see it was dissolved in February 2024, as I'm continuing to expose the fraud. Now, if you look on the incorporation document of the company, and this is just a brief example of the connections in the fraud here and all of this, and the connections to Export Manor. But you can see on the incorporation document, you have at UK PLC Client Director Ltd. At UK PLC Client Director Ltd. of an address of 5 Jupiter House. Now remember that. And if we go into Property Solutions Southern Limited, okay, this company is the new managing agent for Exmoor Manor Freehold Limited, where all of this exposure started for me. And they were incorporated in June 2007, okay, the month after Madeleine McCann went missing. And the same company is on the incorporation document for the NCA UK Limited company. So if we just go into that, if it loads up. Here you can see on page 3, at UK PLC, Client Director Ltd. So exactly the same company, same address. Now, this in itself may not be overwhelming and significant, but the evidence in its entirety, including this, is absolutely irrefutable, everybody. So back to the document. That company, at UK PLC Client Director Ltd, was incorporated in January 2002, not long after the World Trade Center disaster, and it dissolved as I was exposing the fraud in December 2023. So that's just one example of the National Crime Agency. There's lots of other evidence here, which we're going to look at later in relation to the head of the National Crime Agency, Graham Biggar, linking massively into the fraud and connections to the international child trafficking and back into the Collider technology again. The other thing I just want to show here, just as an element of protection to me really, so I can keep going, but also to let you realise the scope and scale of this centralised criminal system. Here's a police reference that was submitted yesterday, and there's the reference number there. I'm just going to skip to the main content of the document. So this was to Dorset Police. And I've just introduced myself again here. I'm not going to read all of that because it's pretty much what I said at the beginning. But it says, over the last month or so, I have noticed tens of thousands of unknown files appearing on my phone that I am continuously deleting, but hundreds appear again each day and appear to be being backdated. I have removed 709 files today as an example. And here is a video of me showing those files on my phone. Sorry, it's actually 701. That was within 1 day. Okay, I'd already cleared them all from my phone the previous day. So 701 files have been added onto my phone. I'm just showing them and then I'm going to remove them, but they continuously keep adding to them every time I go online. And I'm going to show some other evidence in relation to this side of things in a moment. So I can only imagine what these may have inside them. I've not opened any of them, of course, but I can only imagine what they're trying to do with this. So let's go back to the document. Reading on, I have not opened the files and can only imagine their sinister purpose as I try to expose the criminal system to safeguard humanity and particularly children. My device has been infiltrated numerous times trying to expose the system, including emails having been removed, tracking apps trying to be installed, and more recently a section of document exposing the intelligence agencies being removed through the Microsoft 365 app. Microsoft Limited, this company number, incorporated in 1982, appears to have altered its incorporation document to make certain sections illegible. That I suspect was done as the exposure continued. There are multiple other areas connecting them to the fraud, such as the addresses and other companies via directors. Just to show you, Microsoft Limited, it was incorporated. This is on the Companies House Register here in 1982. And if we look at the incorporation document, you can see where certain elements or sections of the document appear to have been removed or altered. So you can see this first page is very clear and bold. You can read everything apart from down in the bottom left hand corner here, they appear to have removed a company name, but you can just see parts of it here. Now what they've done is remove it from certain signed sections of the document. So I suspect that this is a genuine signed signature, and they've panicked as the exposure continues and wanted to remove the connection between that company and this signature. So that's one element. Also, the address here, City Road, is a variation of the falsification through the non-verified addresses they're using, various variations of City Road. So it's one that's used a lot, actually, and Nigel Farage is also heavily implicated and tied to companies through this fraud, and that's one of the locations that is linked to Nigel Farage. And on this part of the document, you can actually see you've got ICC Legal Services. Now that connects to the research of Robert Maxwell. Okay, so they've left that on there because I suspect there is no signature part which can link to an individual and provide the accountability and liability. So they've left that on there, but they have tried to remove, it appears, to coincide with the removal on the first document, the bottom left one. And at the bottom here, you can see everything is very clear on this signed part of the certificate, apart from the signature that they have removed. This is serious fraud, everybody. Also, those who have followed my evidence will recognise this company, and this is just showing another quick connection through the people record of Microsoft and linking into the centralised criminal system. At the bottom here, there's one of the directors, David Svensson, connects to, well, first of all, this one becomes relevant in the later evidence. You've also got gateway companies which become relevant, linking in with the intelligence agencies. But Eclipse Film Partners is one of them that links into what appears to link all areas of the fraud of the film companies. Now, I can probably speculate that is because those companies, I suspect, are involved in very serious crimes against children. And that's what links all of these, the areas of the fraud, and how they've managed to centralise everything is through the crimes against the children, and the evidence they acquire from individuals to maintain control over governments in relation to that. And this company, you can see it was incorporated in 2005 and it dissolved in July 2024, which is the same month that I made the connection to the adrenochrome and the blood taken from tortured children and the fraud. And notice the address, Field Fisher Riverbank House. Now, Field Fisher is another company connected into this fraud, system of fraud. Going back to the police report, Satya Nadella has been the CEO of Microsoft since 2014, and Companies House shows that a very identical name other than some added names connects to Nadella IT Consulting Limited, and that links immediately to the fraud and the research of the World Trade Center disaster and the paedophile information exchange by Companies Made Simple on its incorporation document. I'm a bit mindful of the time, so I'm not going to go into all of this, but you can verify that if you want. And this is also going to go into the evidential research document. My mobile phone provider is Voxy by Vodafone. And like all mobile phone companies, they are part of the centralised criminal system. So will likely be facilitating the infiltration of my mobile phone. As an example, you will see that Vodafone Group Services Limited, with this company number, was incorporated in 1999 and is a criminal company that was started with Swift Incorporations Limited and Jordans and Sons Limited. And Jordans Limited, the same as Exbourne Manor Freehold Limited. Both companies are fraudulent, which means the Vodafone company is criminal because the illegality continues through the documents. I'll just show you Vodafone Group Services. This is incorporated in July 1999. You can see the original or previous names of the company. If we look at the filing history, look at the filing history, you'll be able to see Swift Incorporations and Jordans Limited, which are the same company as Exbourne Manor, where this all started for me. There you go. So at the top, Swift Incorporations Limited. Further down, Jordans Limited. Just to confirm, here's Exbourne Manor Freehold Limited. And this was incorporated, again, this is no coincidence, in August 2007. So 2 months after Madeleine McCann went missing. And if you look on the filing history, on the incorporation document, you will see the same companies, Swift Incorporations Limited and Jordans Limited. And just to confirm the evidence earlier, there's Property Solutions Southern Limited. Remember, we were looking at the @UK PLC Client Director Limited connection to the NCA UK Limited. Well, there's Property Solutions Southern, and you can see at the bottom my name where I was removed. I didn't resign, okay, I was removed in 2023. And above you can see that Anthony Roberts, who was the original acting chairman, resigned in July 2022, and that was after I wanted to look at the authentic bank documents of our company. He was then reinstated after I was removed. You can see the same date, 1st of July 2023, he was brought in, and Deborah Fleming was also brought in as a director. And Deborah Fleming links to the Fleming family, which are heavily implicated in international government fraud through banking, linking into Hollywood via Ian Fleming, who wrote the James Bond books and movies that came from them. Also linked into the pharmaceutical industry and tied in to linking into the Ukrainian government, but also the Russian government and also connected into the energy industry as well via JP Morgan, who was involved with Tesla. And just quickly, there's so much I could show you, but just quickly look at AstraZeneca UK. I know I've shown this before. Obviously, the intervention company. You can see the different names at the bottom here. And if you look on the incorporation document, remember, Export Manor Freehold Limited was where I acquired forged Lloyds bank documents, and I was removed as a director for refusing to file those forged bank documents to commit a serious crime. And here's AstraZeneca UK, and you can see Swift Incorporations at the top and Jordan's Limited. And Andrew Bridgen, who is supposedly fighting against vaccine, the intervention situation, is actually connected to these companies. Going back to the police report, Margarita Della Valle became Vodafone CEO in 2023 as the exposure continued, and appears to have duplicate records on Companies House and linking significantly to the fraud straight to the same companies as Export Manor and companies with possible references to adrenochrome, the blood taken from tortured children. I'm not going to go into everything and show you all of this because I won't have time. The research of Elon Musk, apparently the richest man in the world, links significantly to the fraud through Companies House, and also appears to be connected to South American ethical hacker. Israeli spyware company Pegasus is also shown throughout the research of the fraud, connecting quickly to the government issued radios used by emergency workers, mobile phone companies, and to BT Openreach, for example. Here's Wikipedia for Pegasus. It says it is a spyware developed for the Israeli cyber arms company NSO Group that was designed to be covertly and remotely installed on mobile phones running iOS and Android. While NSO Group markets Pegasus as product for fighting crime and terrorism, governments around the world have routinely used the spyware to surveil journalists, lawyers, political dissidents, and human rights activists. The sale of Pegasus licenses to foreign governments must be approved by the Israeli Ministry of Defense. The heads of all intelligence agencies' research connects significantly to the fraud and appear to be positioned as part of the criminal network to target the innocents. This all means the masses are at risk of illegal infiltration and surveillance, and with those behind it being linked to all terrorist events researched so far. These methods and agencies are very likely being used to prevent the innocents from exposing their criminal system and using their staged terrorist events as the excuse. And then I'll just continue a little bit on the second report. Thanks very much for watching this video. We're going to come back for the next bit and look more in depth at some of the more recent evidence and how that ties into the intelligence agencies and the military. Take care.